Hello, SAFHER community. Welcome back to another session of our SAFHER demo series. Today we'll be covering the creation of entities. We'll begin with configuring an entity type in the admin console and then move on to actually creating an entity from the internal site as an internal user, either a supervisor, clerk, or inspector. So here we are on the admin console within SAFHER where I'm signed in. And this, remember, in the admin console is where individuals within your organization who have those admin rights can come in and configure specific things within this system that you deem need to be configured within your programs. So over here on the left menu bar, to complete today's activities, we'll come down here to the entity management screen and we'll move into entity types. We'll see here we've got a row up at the top where we have the ability to search for existing entity types. We have the ability to select the entity group type that we're looking for. Remember, the entity group type is just the compartmentalization to help define whether these entity types are products, people, or facilities. And then you also, in the development or creation of this, will actually assign these program group types, meaning the programs that you have in your organization, whether that's, animal food or retail food, or et cetera. And then obviously their status, whether they're active or inactive. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and add a new entity type to create this new entity type. Remember, these entity types is just a way to further compartmentalize our data. This can assist in reporting functions later on that we develop, but it doesn't have to be this complicated. It can just simply be a way of segregating data a little bit further. So from here, we're just going to go ahead and add a new entity type by selecting the Add button, and that brings us up to our data entry screen for creating this entity type. So I'm just going to create a generic entity type, and we're just going to call it a retail food store. And we're just going to copy this into the description. You can further define this in the description if you'd like. And we're going to associate this to an entity group type. Obviously, as a store, this would be a facility, but you can create this entity type also as a person or a product. If you had, as a person, you might have a pesticide applicator or something along those lines, or a specific product like a pet food. But we're going to select facility here. We do have some validation in here. I can't create something that's already been created under the organization that I'm in. So I'm just going to simplify this by putting an A at the end so it's not a duplicate. And I'm going to make it active. And then I hit the submit button. And that piece of the creation process is complete. So as you see, that entity type that I just created, retail food store A, shows up on the top of my existing entity types list. And you can see that it's active. And you can see over here, I can edit this here or add additional information. I'm not going to add any additional reference data at this time, but we can go in and edit and verify that what we've got is what we want to call it. Notice that the entity group type is grayed out because once it's been created, an entity type has been created, you cannot change the entity group type that it's associated with. So if you needed to make that correction, you'd have to make this one inactive, create a new one, and associate it with a different entity group type. So we're just going to cancel out of this edit screen and go back to where we were. And that's the completion of that creation in the admin console. So we're going to navigate over to the internal user site, where as a supervisor, clerk, or inspector, I will be able to come over here to the entities and actually create a facility based on that entity type that we just created. So now that we're here on the home screen of the internal SAFHER site, we're going to come down to entities. And the entity type that we just created, we associated with the entity group type facilities. So we're going to select facilities and we're going to create a facility. So we're going to select the create facility button over here. And that takes us to a list of all the entity types that have been created thus far for everything that I have access to. But with this great search bar, we know that we just created the entity type retail food store A. So I can just type in retail and it limits that view to just everything with retail in it. So I can select that retail food store A and next. And that begins the process of creating this new entity. The first step is to collect ownership information. And as you can see here from the dropdown, we have several different options. We have a corporation, government affiliation, individual, nonprofit, and partnerships. So whichever suits the purpose of your entity that you're creating, you would make that selection. I'm going to select an individual ownership, and you have the ability to create a new owner who's not already in the system or an existing one. I'm going to select an existing one. And I'm just going to go ahead and search because I'm going to use something that I've already got in here for simplicity today. And so I'm going to select this John Flunger, and it will pre-populate with the information that's already in the system. And select right through this. Now I begin to enter the business information for the entity that we're creating. And I'm just going to call this Flunger Deli, since the owner is John Flunger. And then I'm going to associate that with a program group type. So this is a retail food establishment. We're going to skip by FEI number because that's not required in retail. We're going to add a phone number. Alternate phone numbers are not required, but primary, the main phone number is. We have the ability to work some risk into this entity that we're creating, but I'm going to skip by that right now. In previous demos, I've explained that that's under development. And once that's developed, we'll go ahead and do another demo video on that. The physical address is auto-populated because it was already associated with the owner, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it that way and select the state. And then select the county that that's in. And then you could add a different postal address for that, but if it's the same, you can just go ahead and select that it's the same as the physical address and hit next. So you can add contacts here. Our contact, I'm going to leave as, the owner of that business, as the owner operator, but you have to have at least one on-site contact. So you'll need at least one contact here. And an address. If it's different, you'll need a different postal address. But if it's the same as the facility's address, you can select that. You can add additional contacts or delete contacts as needed if your on-site contact changes. But we're going to go ahead and add that contact. Notice I get this thing up here that I have to select an on-site contact. If I had more than one contact, I could select any of them as the on-site contact, but because I only have one contact associated, I do have to select that on-site contact for this individual. And like I said, here you can remove contacts and you can even edit contacts from here as well, just like on the previous sections where we had this edit function here. I'm going to hit next. And now we put in the actual facility information that we're creating. So you can select whether it's seasonal or not. And that way you can limit the operating months of that facility. But we're going to leave this as is. And we're going to say that it opens at 8 o'clock every day. I can just copy these down as we go through here. And so we're opening at 8 a.m. every day, and we're going to say that we close at 11. So I can just copy this down as well here. Once we get this done, we'll move on to capacity. We get some kind of demographic information on this facility. We can include capacity, number of employees, opening dates, things like that if we need to. None of them are required. It just depends on what your requirements are in your organization. I'm just going to select the water source and sewage disposal here so we have some demographic information for this facility, and hit next. And then we have the ability to review this information. If any of it's wrong or needs to be adjusted, I can go back and edit any of those details as well. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and submit. And as you can see here, I now have Flunger Deli listed in my facilities as a new entity. And we can go back into that and see all that information that we created just now. That concludes our demo for today. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to sharing another demo shortly.